Good afternoon. I would like to talk about the Israel Hamas war. I have been obsessed, like many others, with what's going on. Um, what I've come to realize from the fact that I've been doing a lot of research on the internet, and uh, there have been other bombings of Gaza at other times. They've been through other wars where Israel has attacked them and the civilians have been bombed in Gaza before on in other years, but never this bad. Um, Many people on who are pro-Israel, which I am not. I am for the Palestinians. I am not. This was not always my view. My mother was Jewish, and not really. She died in 2022, but I don't really know whether she was pro-Israel or pro-Palestine because we didn't really talk about it. But I just always kind of assumed all my life that I should be for Israel for some reason. Um, but when when October 7th happened, it was tragic. It was horrible. It was really terrible. It wasn't as if this was out of the blue. The long history of apartheid, which I didn't even know about, I confess my ignorance. The apartheid of Israel to the Palestinians, that they could just shoot Palestinians or murder Palestinians and get away with it, and not just the IDF, but Jewish settlers like in the West Bank. They call it the West Bank, but it's actually Palestine occupied territory. The Palestinians are the indigenous people, sort of like the Native Americans are to America, or the Aborigines in Australia. Well, the Native Americans in America have rights now. I know they had to live on. It's terrible what they've been through, and I don't want to get into that. I'm not talking about that right now, but and South Africa, which filed the case against Israel, had apartheid. But even I have heard from South Africans that the apartheid that they had was not even as bad as the apartheid that Israel has had, of persecuting Palestinians and the Palestinians having no rights at all. So when this happened, my ignorant self did not even know anything about I all I knew was that, like, the state of Israel was established in 1947, so the Jewish refugees of Israel Holocaust from the Jews from the Holocaust in Europe could be, that had been displaced, would have their own state. But it doesn't work. It hasn't worked because I'm not going to go into the history of it. I just want to talk about the here and now about this war, the Israel-Hamas war. So Hamas, I didn't know anything, but when I heard on the news, and it was like big news, October 7th, but when I heard that Israel was cutting off the electricity, water, and fuel to Gaza, they actually pay Israel for all that. Because Israel won't let them have their own. It's sort of like they have like barbed wire fences around Gaza. I didn't know any of this. And their borders are Egypt and Israel, and they were able to go into Israel to have menial jobs, but they weren't allowed to spend the night or anything. Anyway, as soon as I heard that an Israeli politician said we're cutting off their water and power and fuel because they're just animals, something clicked. I mean, finally the light switch went on, and I realized because I had friends that tell me, they, were for Palestine, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't really listen to why or what they had to say. And I'm talking about even Jewish friends, because people would be surprised how many Jews, a lot of people have become anti-Semitic because of this, and I understand that. I almost feel that way myself. I've been called an anti-Semite by my third cousin who lives in Jerusalem. It's not an anti. Even Palestinians know the difference between Zionists and Jews, and being anti-Zionist is not being anti-Semitic. And I just want to say that, like Dr. Finkelstein, his parents were Holocaust survivors. He's Jewish. He's a political scientist. He is very much sympathetic to Palestinians, and he lives in New York City, but he has a doctorate in, I think I just said that. He is very passionate about supporting Palestine, and there's a video of him, a girl asked a question. It was at some university, I think, and he's like, my parents survived the Holocaust. Both of them, my whole family on my father's side died in concentration camp. But I don't want to see one crocodile tear for the Holocaust. If you had any decency, you would be crying for the Palestinians. So anyway, the reason that I bring this up is because there are brave Jews in Israel who are, they don't really have the same news coverage we do everywhere else. It's all censored, but there are reporters in Israel who do know what's going on in Gaza and risk their life to tell the world. There's one woman that was on Democracy Now!, which I like to watch, and she was telling about how Israel is using, one of the war crimes is that they're using starvation in Gaza as a war crime. They haven't even been letting trucks in, and this includes, and England's even been talking about, well, they should at least put the water back on for them. I mean, they can't get diapers for their babies. Women can't get feminine sanitary products. So it's been a humanitarian crisis, and not to mention the fact that Israel bombing hospitals. And the Doctors Without Borders said that is just a lie. There was no weapons factory going on in the hospital. There was no military organization going on in the hospital. Hamas does not use human shields. It's the IDF. They will go into, in fact, Dr. Finkelstein, I found this out from Dr. Finkelstein, whose parents were Holocaust survivors. He says the IDF go into Palestinians' homes, push them to the window and go behind them, and then shoot from behind them. So they literally use human beings, Palestinians, as human shields. I've seen them shoot Palestine on TV. I've seen many videos of them just shooting Palestinians dead. They just do it all the time. Israeli Jewish settlers from Israel or wherever, they will come into with the UN mandate of 1947 said they're supposed to stay in Israel proper, I'll call it, and let the Palestinians have, that little bit of territory they have, but the Palestinians have no rights. Shepherds that have lived there for thousands of years, since before Jesus, get shot and there's no consequences, or they steal their land, they bulldoze their houses. It's all over the internet. You can see the evils of it. So there's no denying of it. Israel's going to lose. At The Hague is starting tomorrow, South Africa. Everyone who is on our side for the Palestinians and for Gaza, the terrible, terrible genocide. I forgot to mention, genocide is what's going on when you kill this many people and children, and they do target children. And a U.S. reporter was there saying, well, if you're trying to avoid any human civilian casualties, why would you be using two 2,000-pound bombs in densely populated urban areas, and Israeli commanders just blah blah blah, some stupid thing that makes no sense. It's just gibberish, and you can see that Blinken's pulling back, distancing from Israel, and people are upset with Biden. I don't know. It almost seems like Biden's like sold his soul or something, because he seems like he was a nice guy to begin with, but truthfully, the Republicans would be even worse. But then some people say that if the U.S. just stopped sending money and they just said stop killing people, they would. And they've tried to tell Israel just to be more careful. Israel obviously wants to kill children, many children, and maim many children. The use of white phosphorus is another war crime. The war crimes are going to come out starting tomorrow, and they're going to be harrowing, and they're going to be despicable, and it will be televised. And Israel will lose. They will be held accountable, and the United States might too, for being complicit in this. One of the protests, some of the protesters, what they say is, Israel bombs, USA pays, how many kids did you kill today? And that pretty much says it. I know U.S. foreign policy has been to be for Israel for as far back as I can remember, and I'm pretty old. I was born in 1961. Kennedy said in 1960 that Israel, is our great friend and everything. But it's gone too far, and I don't know if I said this, but young evangelicals are even becoming non-Zionist. Evangelicals tend to be Zionist because they want Israel to kill everyone and be the most powerful nation, and then Jesus is supposed to come back and they're supposed to go to heaven, and then everybody else is supposed to die. So it isn't even really that they care about the Jews. It's really, and also I just want to say one more thing. My mother was Harvard alumni, and I did make an error because I said my mother knew about Claudine Gay, but my mother actually died before Claudine Gay's time. But when I was taking care of my mother, she did get Harvard Magazine, and I do remember, or vaguely remember, or I think I remember, Claudine Gay's picture on the cover of Harvard Magazine. And I feel like they made such a big deal about this anti-Semitic thing, because I think Claudine Gay was lovely. I mean, the way she conducted herself was lovely, and that I don't even know her name, Clarice or whatever, Elise something, was like, I don't want to say the word because I thought she was horrible, but Claudine Gay was only saying what she was told to say, and I think she wanted to support freedom of speech, and nobody really called for genocide of Jews. But what was happening was a genocide was taking place in Gaza, and there are Palestinian students, and I guess, she didn't want to take sides. I mean, but on the other hand, she was just saying what she was told to say. So, in defense of Claudine Gay, I don't think she did anything wrong. And I have nothing to say about, the University of Pennsylvania, but I made a mistake that my mom would have been elated about Claudine Gay, because my mom voted for Obama. She was very, I don't know, she just was that kind of person, like a liberal Jew, I guess what you call it. Anyway, if my mom was alive, I think that she would, and she didn't have Alzheimer's like she died from, that she would and understood what was going on, but she couldn't really watch the news before she died. Nothing like that was going on then. I think she would have felt really bad for Gaza and for the West Bank, and I just want to say, if people uh think, like, I don't know, I just don't want this to be like a legacy of Jews, because Jews are generally good people. But I think the Israeli culture is really messed up, and this whole idea of God gave us Israel, or some people say God gave the Jews Israel. That's childish, and God's not a real estate guy, and it just doesn't work that way. So if I offend anybody, that's fine. More power to me. No, that's just a joke. But thank you, and good evening. Namaste.